Good afternoon, folks. And if the minister is ready, if you could turn your camera on so that we could see that you're ready, and then we can get going. Thank you.
So I think we're good to go.
Good afternoon. Will the section of the Committee of Supply please come to order? We have one small item of business before we begin today with the Department of Agriculture and Resource Development. At this session's previous meeting, where we considered the estimates of the Department of Families, an error was made and an incorrect number was read out in a resolution that was passed. Therefore, I ask that this committee briefly revisit Resolution 9.3 of the Department of Families so that we may read the correct number into the record and pass the resolution as written in estimates. I will now reread the resolution. So Resolution 9.3. Be it resolved that there be granted to Her Majesty a sum not exceeding $13,616,000 for families, corporate services, for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2022. Shall the resolution pass? Shall the resolution pass?
Pass.
The resolution is accordingly passed. Thank you. So we will now continue with the business before this committee. The next set of estimates to be considered by this committee of the supply is for the Department of Agriculture and Resource Development. Does the Honourable Minister have an opening statement?
Mr. Chair, yes, I do have an opening statement.
Okay, Minister Eichler, go ahead.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Agriculture and Resource Development. Our government is committed to supporting ongoing innovation, growth, improvement, and resiliency to reach the full potential of our provincial resources on behalf of all Manitobans. The department's core budget is $257.5 million for 2021-22, which represents an increase of 1% over the previous year. The budget 2021 budget continues to advance the needs and opportunities for agriculture and resource development with funding that focuses on economic growth, competitiveness, and sustainability while ensuring the protection of Manitoba's natural resources. The agricultural and natural resource sectors directly contribute 11.5% of provincial gross domestic product and 7.4% of provincial jobs in 2020. The department continues to invest in business risk management, programming such as agri-insurance, agri-stability, to ensure a strong and healthy agriculture sector. In addition, the department invested $62 million in agri-recovery drought assistance to support livestock producers challenged by Manitoba's extreme dry conditions. This drought assistance program for the livestock and forage industry is the largest in Manitoba's history. Despite the challenging weather conditions, Manitoba agri-food and processing sectors continues to grow. It is one of the key economic drivers of the province, with a $2 billion invested by Manitoba processors since 2016. The budget 2021 continues investments that leverage Manitoba's protein advantage with support focused on the protein advantage strategy, implementation to position Manitoba as North America's leader in sustainable plant and animal protein. As part of these efforts, the Manitoba government and the Protein Consortium has released the Sustainable Protein Challenge Dialogue Final Action to Impact, Map, and Guide Sector Action Plans and Outcomes. Through the 2021 budget, Agriculture and Resource Development is investing an additional $100,000 to implement the Protein Advantage strategy with support for sustainable protein development initiatives and investment attraction to build business development opportunities for plant and animal protein. The budget offers continued support for engineering, research, training, innovations related to sustainable livestock production and processing to help protect the environment and focus on work related to land use requirements for livestock production, greenhouse gas emissions, and efficient use of water and energy. Through our participation on the 2 Billion Trees program, Manitoba will have access to 63 million over the next 10 years towards increments projects focusing on natural infrastructure, supporting sustainable forest management, and incremental reforestation projects. The Food Development Center will now operate as a section within the department, focused on building Manitoba's competitive advantage in the agri-food sector. The budget also contains additional funding to support the animal welfare program and sound animal welfare practices. Manitoba is allocating almost $1 million in additional funding to implement key recommendations from the animal welfare program review, bringing in the total investment in animal welfare in the province to $2.7 million. A new One Welfare program will provide $150,000 towards the education and charge management for animal welfare in remote communities. The budget also includes additional funding of $400,000 for a total of $2 million allocated towards geoscience programming to support informed decisions on mineral, aggregate, oil and gas resource opportunities and attract investments. The increase in funding will support collaborative initiatives focused on mineral studies in North and investment attraction from mineral development companies. In addition, the mining strategy is development to encourage investment in Manitoba with an emphasis on marketing. Manitoba is a preferred jurisdiction for exploration and development. We have created a dedicated capacity within the department, provide a single window approach to permitting and licensing. A project has been initiated to establish a single window permitting system for mineral exploration to help mining development. We also have created a dedicated capacity for engagement and consultation with Indigenous communities, public and industry to ensure they're participating in shaping government programs and policies, strengthening Indigenous relationships and boosting their participation in economic activities has been embedded in many of the department's strategic initiatives, including our protein strategy and mining strategy as part of the department's efforts toward truth and reconciliation. With the introduction of the education property tax rebate combined with the farm school tax rebate, we're putting more money back in the hands of farmland owners. The department also continues to make investments that protect the environment, natural resources for Manitobans while addressing climate change issues. To enhance climate change adaptation and mitigation, the department has developed a number of green initiatives, including the GROW program, environmental farm planning, watershed ecological goods and services, beneficial management practice, otherwise known as the BMP, the water management strategy. Many of those initiatives are well underway. That concludes my comments, Minister Chair. I'll turn it back to you.
Well, thank you very much for your comments. Does the critic from the official opposition have an opening statement?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Burrell, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do not have an opening statement.
Okay, we thank you for that then. So under Manitoba practice, debate on the minister's salary is the last item considered for a department in the Committee of Supply. Accordingly, we shall now defer consideration of line item 3.1A contained in resolution 3.1. Does the committee wish to proceed through the estimates of this department chronologically or have a global discussion?
Global discussion.
Global discussion. Thank you. That it is agreed then that questioning from this department will proceed in a global manner with all resolutions to be passed once questioning has concluded. The floor is now open for questions. Mr. Brar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, everybody. Welcome back to the session again, and welcome back, old new minister. It's always a pleasure to work together for Manitoba producers. I would start with a request to the minister to undertake to provide us with a current organizational chart for the department, including names and vacancies.
Minister Eichler.
Yes, Mr. Chair, just a question to help my critic understand we're getting the right information. So we do have a staff organizational chart that we developed just recently once the restructuring was done on August the 3rd, or are you wanting a organizational chart going back prior to the reorg once the department was reorganized?
Mr. Brar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The latest one, Mr. Chair, that's what I am requesting for after the reorganization, and what's the current situation with all the details of names and vacancies at present.
Minister Eichler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So at Culture and Resource Development, we have, our department has 824 FTEs as of August the 31st, 795 which are regular, 16.8 are term. There's 0 technical. There's 11.35 departmental that's hired under delegated authorities. We have 224.25 vacancies, which is a 24% vacancy rate. And we have 65 staffing, which authorized requests have been approved to fill those positions. So I hope that helps my critic in his numbers that he's asking for.
Mr. Brar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Would the minister be able to provide the names and vacancies for all the parts of the department?
Minister Eichler.
Thank you. Yes, we can endeavor to get that to my critic as soon as possible. As you know, COVID has certainly made an impact on those that are working in office and those that are working from afar. Coming from your background, understanding, having worked for our department at one point in time in your career, certainly understand that we do have a turnover from time to time, and of course, what we will be sharing with the critic will be based on whatever date that's at, with the understanding that those positions do change on a regular basis. But for all intents and purposes, it will give you an outline about who's in place now, or at the time at which we have the information provided available, and we can provide that to you either in writing or by email, whichever the member prefers.
Mr. Brar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I thank the Minister for this information. As we all know that extension services are extremely important for addressing information needs of our farmers. Can the Minister kindly share how many farm production extension specialists the department has lost since 2016 and how many have been hired since then?
Minister Eichler.
Thank you. I'll start back in 2016 to give my critic a bit of the background information. So I was sworn in on May the 3rd of 2016 as the Minister of Agriculture, as it was known at that time. It's entirely a different ministry now. Agriculture makes up about 20% of our department. I don't have the exact numbers of the staff numbers we had when I was minister before, but as I put on the record early on, we have now over 800 staff. That is very diverse when you consider conservation officers, mining, forestry, but we can provide numbers on on our production officers in order to try and help the member understand how it has changed so much. And also now with the focus on trying to offer better services faster, we've also reallocated some of those to different offices now, so that we have a mass perspective and an agriculture perspective those representatives can work together and work in tandem. As the member knows, a number of those vacancies and positions have changed since even from last spring. But we can endeavor to get the member a list of those persons, what they were in 2016 and what they are now. But they'll be totally different than what it was in 2016 as opposed now to 2021. I hope that might help the member understand how the department's changed in 5 long years.
Mr. Brar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks the Minister for the response, which I don't think is the one that satisfies my demand for that information. It's clear that that we have 824 FTEs in the department, but my focus here is public extension services. As we all know that public extension services are the unbiased, neutral extension services that are very much required for the farming community to make decisions on their farm. So my question is that I can make it simple. Did we lose a significant number of farm production extension specialists? The people, in simple language, the people who go to the farm and recommend technologies and answer face-to-face questions with the farmers. So I'm talking about that particular group of people, which could be livestock, environment, agronomy, soil sciences. So these farm production extension specialists used to be in a good number back then. How much of that workforce did we lose over the years? The reorganization of department doesn't impact how this question has to be answered, because we're talking about a particular team that was there, it's still there, but I think it has been shrunk a lot. How much did it shrink, and how many specialists in this category we lost over these years? It could be from 2019, from 2018, 2017, not necessarily since 2016. So the minister can try again.
Minister Eichler.
Thank you. I'll try and share this information with my critic. So we have our director, which is underneath that particular individual. We have administrative assistant. Then we have an extensive extension coordinator. I can provide the names. I'm not going to put them on the record to my critic. And then we have under the manager of crop production, and then we have a crop specialist pathologist. We have a entomologist, pest manager for potatoes, bee specialist for a crop specialist, another potato position. That one is vacant. Then we have a crop specialist, emerging industry as well, crop specialist under nutrients, crop specialist under pesticides, another one under diagnostics. We have one for oil seeds, grains, wheats, vegetables, hemp, pulses, adaptation. We have livestock specialists, several of them. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 livestock specialists. And we have a livestock adaptation. And then also under ag adaptation, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now those also include also eggs and poultry, turkeys as well. We also have soil folks. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 soil survey, environmental, 2 environmental. So, but we'll give the my critic a full list of those on our org chart, so he can be able to see, you know, where we're at now as compared to where we were. It will look entirely different, as the member knows, from being within our department. These change pretty well annually, and of course with our reorg with our ag offices, everybody has access to a production specialist under our new system. So whenever someone calls in, they can ask for whatever service they want, and that service will be provided to them. It may not be right at that moment, but in most cases it will be. But somebody will get back that's certainly trained in that field of expertise that they needed information on. So I hope that helps my member.
Mr. Brar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to the Minister for the response. Most of the information that I just had from the Minister, I appreciate the information, but most of the specialists that he mentioned are actually the provincial specialists. I would like to share this with the committee for information that, for example, there's one entomologist in the whole province. So that's a separate story. What I was pointing to was, for example, the minister represent a good part of the Interlake region in Manitoba. And I don't think that there is any farm production extension specialist crops in Interlake. There used to be 2 offices, Toulon and Arborg. Now there's only one. Toulon has been closed. So I don't think there is even a single farm production extension specialists in crops. So that was my concern, that how the people of that region would seek information that's available with the department. What's the use of having our information in the libraries and in the books if there is nobody to disseminate that on the farm at the ground level? So that was my concern. My next question is, did the department hire any farm production extension specialists during these years? If so, how many were hired?
Minister Eichler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just for clarity, I'd like to ask my critic, you want the number of extension specialists we hired for the last year or the last 5 years?
Last few
Mr.
years.
Brewer?
Sorry about that, Mr. Chair. Thank you. I appreciate if you can share the information since 2016. If not, I would take the information that you have for 2 years, 3 years, whatever you have. Thank you.
Minister Eichler.
Yeah, rather than try and, wait this out until department finds the information, what we'll endeavor to do for the member is providing with org charts from, say, the last 2 years. And that would probably give him the information that he would need. Or we can sit and wait, and we can wait for the department to gather the information. It'll take us a few minutes, maybe 5 minutes, but it's entirely up to what the member would like to do.
Mr. Brewer?
I can continue with the next question. In the meantime, the staff can find that information.
Go ahead, Mr. Brewer.
So this is a simpler one. We don't need much research on it. It could be answered off the top of the head from the people surrounding the minister, I think. Do we have a director in place for this extension division, or it's vacant? If it's vacant, since how long the department didn't hire a director for extension services?
Minister Eichler.
I'm very pleased to share with the critic that the primary agriculture person is Patty Rothenberger. Now, she was with me when I was a previous minister. She took a leave of absence. She's back. Very honored to be able to have her. She's wonderful, and we're very lucky in Department of Agriculture to have her expertise and advice that she provides not only to me, but to the farm families across Manitoba.
Mr. Brewer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks, Minister, for the information. I would just like to know what the Minister thinks about the extension services in Manitoba. Do we need to strengthen and recruit more extension personnel for our farming community, or the minister plans to shrink the department and leave our farming community for information purposes at the mercy of the private information providers? What's the plan?
Minister Eichler.
That's a real easy one. I was looking for something a little more difficult, but actually I can be very clear with the member. Agriculture is one of our economic driver engines. And when I first took this role on in 2016, I can tell you that we didn't really have a collaboration and a connection with a lot of the commodity groups. So what I've done is, number one thing I did is I made a partnership with the Keystone Ag producers to provide advice to me. We also had a advisory group put forward some names for us to find innovation, provide new programs, and we started a collaborative approach right across Canada, mainly through our FPT. But we have probably a stronger relationship now, and part of our new West partnership also is very collaborative. I can give the member, some background and understanding that how this is so important that Manitoba don't get left behind. So we established not only a relationship with the federal government, but with our colleagues right across Canada. Our agricultural groups here in Manitoba are a bit different than what they are down east or in Quebec or in Ontario. We in Western Canada have a diverse need. We provide a lot of cereals, a lot of livestock. So what we talk about is what's best for our producers here, and what other programs are being used and developed in other provinces. So we've been able to have that relationship and those ongoing discussions. Even when I just came back to this portfolio, in July, first thing I did is I reached out to the federal minister, Bibo, and said, well, look, we got a problem here in Manitoba. I need you to come to Manitoba. She was here on Wednesday after I called her on Friday. And that's the type of approach that I feel we need for agriculture in Manitoba. Yes, we have to pay attention, but agriculture is ever changing. We never thought about talking about protein like we did, 10 years ago. It's a different story. So agriculture has to stay in that ever changing mode. We see more efficiencies in feed conversions now than ever before. When we talk about livestock specialists and cereal and pulses, I mean, we're growing more canola and than we ever did. We're seeing more peas grown than we ever did, seeing more hemp grown than we ever did. So it's ever changing, and we have to be able to adapt. And our staff has to be able to adapt as well. And that's one of the reasons that we looked at how we might be able to adapt and change. So I know that the member opposite will be able to identify really how quickly we have to pivot. Let's just use our drought for an example. This past summer, we had to have those folks that are providing advice, in particular, not only to just the beef producers, but other livestock sectors, to make sure we had enough water in place. So it's a diverse, but one that has to be responded to in a very quick way, in order to us to be able to pivot to make sure we have, people, in the front lines giving advice to our producers so they can have the tools to be able to make their important decisions on what management strategy they may have to have. So that's why we went to this phone system. And of course, they can call on producers as well. There's a few of them that are barely in the office at all. They're usually out talking to producers. So, and I know the member knows that. So these are critically important for us to be able to make sure that we have the advice and the programs in place, and those programs developed in a way that's going to meet the needs of today and tomorrow.
Mr. Brar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. May I ask how many conservation officers are currently employed by the department? What is the vacancy rate in this team?
Minister Eichler.
Yeah, so currently we have 76 of 91 positions that are filled. The current complement of 76 includes 5 officers, recently posted from the 2020 class of recruits, and it does not include the 6 new recruits in the class of 2021 who are completing initial training and will be posted in the field roles for on-the-job training in the next coming weeks.
Mr. Brar.
There's 8. I wasn't quite finished, Mr. Chair. So
ahead,
we're 83% filled with a 17% vacancy, to follow up the last part of my critic's question. Those are my concluding comments, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Brar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, the Minister. How many conservation officers are anticipated to retire in the next 5 years?
Minister Eichler.
Well, I don't want to date myself here to the whole world, but I don't know when I'm going to retire either. So when you ask how many people are going to retire in conservation, we really don't know. Every individual is a bit different, but I know in my conversations with the department and with those employees in particular, they're dedicated to their jobs and they love their jobs. Most of them that have stayed with us through and through. They might be like me and never want to retire. I don't know. I love what I do. They love what they do. So to give the member a direct number, we can provide the average age. I mean, but age really doesn't mean a lot anymore. I mean, we live longer than we ever have. We work longer than we ever have and retire younger than we ever had. So to be perfectly open and transparent with my critic, I really don't know how to answer the question based on, the generation we live in. But if it's about age, which it shouldn't be in my mind, a lot of older folks do a lot better job than some of the younger guys do. But again, some younger guys do better than the older guys do too. So I'm not going to try and, say how many's going to retire, but I can provide an average age if that would help my critic.
Mr. Brar. Mr. Brar, I believe you're muted. We cannot hear you.
How about now? Is it okay?
That's better. Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Brar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much, the Minister, for the information. I think you got my point. My point was to know the expected people who would be retiring based upon their age of superannuation. Otherwise, nobody can comment when 70 of these 76 could decide to go home and retire. That was not my question. My question is the department aware about the upcoming vacancies due to retirement in normal circumstances, and what's the plan to fill in for those people? Because we are already understaffed, as you said, 17% vacancy rate right now. And if we know that people are aging, everybody is aging, and they would be likely be retiring, and then we must have a plan to fill in those positions. That's what I wanted to emphasize.
Minister Eichler.
Thank you. I do want to share with my critic that I retired once and I didn't like it very much. So that's well, I had to get back to work and do something to keep my sanity. I think a lot of my conservation officers might be a lot like me. They like being out on the land and out in the fresh air. It's an opportunity to be able to protect the environment and serve the general public in protection of wildlife, as well. But we always strive to make sure that we have a good management strategy. We talk about their careers, what they're short. I mean, we've made significant changes the way the wildlife officers work now than what they were doing even 5 years ago. But that's as a result of consultation and working tight with them. I can't take any credit for that because it wasn't under my department. But coming back to my comments earlier on, so we hired 5 officers from 2020, 6 from 2021. So we see a trend of people wanting to be involved in this. In fact, I have a very good friend that's a conservation officer, been since he was 18 years old. To be honest, I don't think he's ever going to retire. It's his lifelong dream. But there'll be others that come along that inherit some money that are just wore out. They're not ready, and they're probably going to retire before my best friend does. So really, I really don't have much more to offer my critic other than that. But we see an ongoing trend. But we have a very open dialogue with our staff, and right now, I think we're very strong, and we'll continue to build and reinforce our staff to make sure they have some helpers as they go by. And the communication system has changed so much as well. When we came into power in 2016, we had an antiquated, poor communication system, and morale was at the lowest it could have ever been. We've changed that. They have the ability to be able to communicate better now than they ever did. They need backup. We have helicopters, we've got planes, we have communications, they're living their life dream right now under the current situation.
Mr. Brar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to say thank you to all those hardworking conservation officers who are serving Manitobans. Some of them, as has been said, most of their lives. That's appreciable, and that's good. And I look forward for the youth to come into this department and serve as well. But unfortunately, these conservation officers are being paid way less than their counterparts in our neighboring provinces, right and left. So is there any retention strategy that this department is working on for these conservation officers? There has been examples, published examples of conservation officers working at a higher level in seniority and moving to another province at entry level and still getting paid more. So what are minister's thoughts and plans for retention of this staff, which is very dear, very good human resource for our lands in Manitoba?
Minister Eichler.
Thank you. I'd offer my colleague a bit of advice on this one. Wages are not set by my department. They're negotiated through central services. But I do think it's really critically important that we do, or I put on the record, is about working conditions, about the environment, about the tone that's set. So my ADMs and my staff continually meet with these wildlife officers in order to ensure that they have the tools that they need. They asked for a helicopter, we got them a helicopter. They asked for lots of things, but when it comes to the wages, we let central services worry about that. They do a government of whole approach. I believe, and probably my critic knows, but I believe they're in arbitration now. But again, that's not my job as a minister. My job is to provide safety, make sure they got the right tools, the right working conditions, the right environment, and to be able to see these young people come through, 5 last year, 6 this year, that to me is really exciting. And I have to make sure I have protections for my officers as well. So those are things that as a minister of the department, I take great pride in to ensure that my officers have the safety that they need as well as the tools they need in their toolbox to make sure they're safe and be able to do the good work that they do. Because quite frankly, they not only protect people, they protect wildlife too. And they can't do it alone. They have to be in tandem with us and government. And should they be compensated? Darn right they should be. But that's not my job. That's the job of central services.
Mr. Brar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Minister, for what you are doing for these wonderful conservation officers. But we do coordinate with our fellow ministers and departments to make things better for our workers and our teams. I think safety does involve financial safety as well. And I would appreciate if you can attract attention of the fellow minister about working around their salaries and their financial betterment in this department, because we all appreciate what they're doing for all of us. Let's move on to the next set of questions. One thing that's common between the minister and myself is that we both love Toulon due to our ties to Toulon. And Toulon is an example where there used to be MASC and Manitoba Agriculture and Resource Development Department, which is dead now. It's not there anymore. And with the closure of that office, there are impacts in the community. Thousands of dollars that used to go to the local community is lost. And there are personnel working in the department have been moved to different other locations, for example, Arborg or other locations. We lost those personnel from that community, from that neighborhood. That also means that the local corner stores and gas stations and whatnot, car mechanics, they lost something with losing this department from Toulon. I am taking this as an example because both of us are connected to that town, but there are 20-ish, I would say, other examples that say the same thing that happened to so many other towns as well, with this PC government's decision to close these ag offices and MASC offices. So I would like to know how many people quit, retired, or were laid off, or terminated, or relocated after this decision taken by the PC government recently.
Minister Eichler.
Thank you. Just want to try and lay this out for my critic. It's a bit difficult, but what I will do is kind of lay out what the new service delivery model looks like. Our whole intent through the department was a single point access for rural Manitobans to all services provided by Manitoba Agriculture Services, Agriculture and Resource Development. RD and MASC are working continually to improve service, with clients, whether by phone, by email, face-to-face. We're even talking about a chat line. We haven't got that online yet, so they can hit a chat button and do that in a more modern way. Also, what we're trying to do is part of our new model, MASC introduced a new position called Client Service Representative to help manage and direct client inquiries. And all 10 client service representatives will now be in place, having received regular training to improve ability to assist clients. Also, first-time callers can choose to receive either in French or English. We've been working with the Francophone Affairs Secretariat, so the phones have been modernized to be able to either have languages in both our official languages, English or French. Also, I think it's really important to know that we've added additional staff to resource the RD extension with the introduction of our Ag Recovery Program. As the member knows, we need to move staff around to meet the needs of today. The member wasn't here, but if you go back to 2011, MASC was endeavored or directed to take on the flood mitigation. Something that we're trained in, but certainly under the previous government at that time, they were embarked on flood recovery, mainly around Lake Manitoba and other parts of the province where they were asked to make settlements. So staff gets moved around. I can say this though, that not one person lost their job. They were offered positions within the government of Manitoba. Our department right now is sitting with 65 vacancies that we've had requests to fill right at this very moment. But for the last 6 months, either through retirements or moving out of the department or starting a different job, there's been 53 that have left my department. I cannot tell the member how many of them are actually agriculture, because the makeup of the department has changed. They work in climate change, they work in water, they work in the wildlife manager, forestry. There's so many positions that are available for these folks to go to now, because it's within the department. They can transfer, they can see other opportunities, they make new friends. And they'll say, well, geez, I didn't know Bob would have so much fun in the fishery side. So they make the switch and they go over to fisheries now. But they were in ag, or they were in mining. So the department's changed so much the way it was to what it is now. So I hope that helps a member with some background on how those positions have changed, but yet they haven't changed. But overall, so right now, if you do the math, we're up 12 positions from what we were 6 months ago.
Mr. Brar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks the minister for the detailed answer, but I was looking for something else. No worries. Can the minister share the total amount of project savings associated with these office closures? How much did the department save?
Minister Eichler.
We didn't save a penny. And I'll tell you why, because it's not under my department. Accommodation services come under central services. So when we look at efficiencies and reorgs, We don't take into account now government as a whole, probably save some money, but Department of Agriculture, Resource Development didn't save a penny because that's not under my budget. That falls under Central Services. So in the reality of it is, if you're looking at cost savings, that was not what this move was about. The move was about how are we going to offer more services, more benefit to our farm families in regards to ag in particular. That's what this particular issue is about. But really, that's what the whole focus was. How do we deliver a better model to meet the needs of our farmers today as opposed to tomorrow, or what it was last year from now?
Mr. Brar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's understandable that there is an impact, but it's hard to measure. I know, I have met people, I have been informed that there are so many people in the department who are deciding to retire just because of these changes, because somebody who was serving in an office, which is at 5 minutes drive from their home, are forced to serve at an office which is 65 minutes away from their home. That makes them decide to retire early. A producer, again, Toulon, a producer 5 minutes at 5 minutes drive from Toulon has to drive 45 minutes to Arborg to get the same services or meet with the same MASC rep or farm extension specialist or whosoever he or she is in the department. That means if the department, doesn't matter if it's agriculture department or any other department, but the government saves money. The government saves money at the cost of the people filling in their gas tanks more often than they used to get the same services. So that's where the pain is. Another impact that I am hearing from the producers is that people have made claims with MASC, had them approved, but are still awaiting to receive their payout. Could the minister explain why there are delays in distributing funds at the same time when the minister is claiming that we are making the system efficient? Can the minister provide what the current average processing time is for MASC claims from the time it's made to when payouts occur?
Minister Eichler.
Thank you. Again, I don't want to date myself here, but when I was farming, things have changed a lot. I see my colleague from Portage La Prairie on the screen here. I know he's a farmer, part of a farmer organization from way back. Things have changed so much on his farm that he took over from his father, and things changed so much from what his father was doing as well. The member brings up an interesting point about staffing and so on. Staffing has been a real challenge with COVID. I don't believe the fact that they had to drive 65 minutes is a reason for staff to leave. I know one of my friends that lives in Tulane, you're talking about Tulane, he said by closing the office in Tulane, made me use the internet. And he said, I never used the internet before. He said, what I used to take all day to do, I did in 15 minutes with a service person actually in Arbor. And then he referred him to another individual that was in Portage La Prairie. He ended up actually made a claim on some products that he didn't realize what he was able to get. So I don't want to just throw technology under the bus and staff under the bus by saying that we had to make you move. They have choices. You can work from home now more than you ever did before. In fact, we backed off on having staff come in because we wanted to make sure they felt safe. And they were safe to others. The last thing we wanted to do was have our staff be a part of spreading COVID. So we took those safety precautions, but also I want to put on the record for the member to understand. So let me answer the first question in regards to the claim. So as of April the 1st, we processed 3,231 claims and returned $70 million that's been paid already on agri insurance. But here's another part of the kicker that we need to understand. So, and I know the member understands this. So we had a lot of disaster in the Interlake area in particular, but other parts of the province as well. So we look back at the crops. So when I became the minister, we said, look, how can we help producers get feed for the livestock to be able to try retain as many as they can? So we started on the wheat and the oats. Then we went to the corn saying, look, the corn's not going to make it. Let's turn that into some feed. My staff through MASC and all the offices went to the farms to assess those crops so they could be able to make a decision whether or not to turn that into feed, what their return would be with insurance, or whether to have no insurance. We also allowed producers to come into the program and not have to pay the 20% penalty rate as well. On top of that, we made sure they were able to get advanced payments for their products. So then we go into move into ag recovery. So we as a government on August the 10th, I believe, my staff can correct me if I'm wrong, but our government decided to put $62 million into an ag recovery program. We actually developed a program in partnership with the federal government on August the 31st. We were sending checks out 2 weeks later. 2 weeks later, we were able to start sending money out to our producers that were hard strapped. We continue to get updates. I'm happy to try and share those with my critic when I get them, but it's all about timing and making sure that we have those services. And quite frankly, I don't think producers care where they're at either. They want information, and things have changed. I use internet more now than I ever did. Let's be honest about it. I'm sure that my critic does too. All of us do. We're doing it right now. Technology changes. Staffing needs change. So how do we adapt? How do we get the best service? How do we get the best results? How do we get money in the hands of producers as fast as we can? Even that has changed. We used to, when I was a banker back in the early days, and I can tell you, everybody come into the bank, they cashed their check, they went and did their things. Now we take a picture with our phone and it's in our account literally in seconds later. So are we adapting? We're trying to find those tools in the toolbox to provide our farm families with those tools And not everybody has internet. I know that's probably going to be the next question. We're working on that too, with the federal government partnership to ensure we have the right services at the right time.
Minister's time has expired. Mr. Brar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Who knows, we would be sitting with the drones tomorrow. That's possible. But again, the same thing, rural connectivity, everybody knows where we are at in Manitoba and what the government is doing to improve that. So my question came from one of the producers who is still waiting for their payout for reseeding their crops. And it's been months. So that's not happening to just a single producer. It's happening to so many producers after these staffing cuts and office closures. So as the minister mentioned about agri-stability, we all witnessed this summer the devastating impacts of drought. And we know how painful it was. Will the minister now sign on to the 80% compensation rate of agri-stability with the federal government to provide Manitobans with great protection? Why is the department delaying to sign up on that?
Minister Eichler.
Thank you. I want to address a question. I don't really a question. I don't like to talk about individuals, but if my critic would like to give me some information through an email, to my office. I'd be happy to check out that individual claim that said he hadn't been paid. I find it interesting, but I'll endeavor to try and get some answers for him so he can get back to that producer. We never want to hold anybody up when it comes to payments. So usually, as the member well knows, there's always two sides to a story. So let's make sure we get the story so we can get the right answers. But happy to take that offline if the member wants to share it with me. If you don't, that's okay too. But I sure don't mind getting involved. I don't like getting involved on individual cases, just like people saying, can you give my son a job? I don't hire people. I got staff to hire people, so I don't get involved in them, but I will endeavor to help the member out and get some information if he needs on an individual case. But I really don't want to set a precedent and start dealing with every individual farmer across Manitoba. We would not be able to get those done. But if it's a serious problem, we need to address it, and I will make sure. But we'll look at it as a government all approach, not just one off, but certainly happy to do that. So I do want to just come back to the question in regards to agri-stability and agri-invest. Of course, agri-stability is the first line of defense that's used to support producers facing financial losses, mainly because of poor yields, rising input costs, low commodity prices. Agri-invest balances are accessible at any time without restriction of the use of those. And I want to say that there's almost $351 million sitting in agri-stability right now that's available to producers. And I know the member knows this, but farmers are always reluctant to pull it out. Most of them use that as a savings account. Some don't. Some do use the programs pretty regularly, but again, that's their management style. It's their money, and they can access it whenever they want. So we don't want that to be part of that. The member asked about the 80%. So what we did to address the drought-related challenge in facing Manitoba's producers in 21 agri-stability interim payment was increased from 50 to 75% to assist producers with short-term cash flow issues. Payments are normally made within 30 days. The government of Manitoba and government of Canada agreed to invoke late participation in regards to agri-stability, as I said earlier on. So we moved the 20% lower payment rebate, those that were proactively involved in that. And of course, when we sit down and we talk, we need 2/3 of the provinces to agree to change the reference margin to 80% to the member's question. Now, Alberta has been very clear on it, Saskatchewan has been very clear on it. As I put it on the record earlier on, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta are entirely different than what producers in Ontario, Quebec, PEI, Nova Scotia, and the programs, we almost need a separate program for Western Canada as opposed to the rest of Canada. And I try to explain that and educate my federal minister as well. So there's not one size that fits all. So we try to adapt and develop programs that will assist our farmers and make sure they have the tools in their toolbox to be able to get the best value for their investment. I know that we've had conversations, not only with Keystone Ag producers, but other lobby groups that come and talk to us. The agri-stability is a great program for the pork producers. We know that has a very high intake with them. Others, not so much. But again, it comes back to each individual's risk management they want to be able to take advantage of. So there's programs out there, but we got to make sure we get it right to the member's point. And of course, climate change, how do we adapt with those? Things change on a regular basis, and drought's going to be part of those. Excessive rain is going to be part of it. Climate change is here, and we want to make sure we have the programs going to meet the needs of our farmers for today and tomorrow.
Mr. Brar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, can I ask how we're doing on time? Is the committee rising at 5 or 2 hours from the time we started?
Yeah, the committee will rise at 6 o'clock today. So we have lots of time.
For ag.
Yeah, I was just informed that we will be switching over at 5 p.m.
At 5 p.m. Okay, thank you. So may I ask the minister about what was the increase in money collected as a result of increases to Crown land leases?
Minister Eichler.
Yeah, I'm very respectful. I know I was in opposition way too long, but rather than hold up the clock, I know I didn't realize we're going to be gone at 5. So rather than, I'll endeavor to I will get the information to my critic on this rather than hold up questions, because I want to be able to help him understand as much as I can about our department. If that's okay with my critic, otherwise we can go ahead and wait until we get the answer.
Mr. Brar.
That's okay. We can jump on to the next question.
Go ahead, Mr. Brar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What was the average increase to Crown land leases this past year, and how many Crown land leases lapsed this year? Or in other words, how many agreements has the government terminated, if that's easy to find?
Minister Eichler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So cancellations for all reasons. 2016, there was 61. 2017, there was 50. 2018, there was 55. 2019, there was 81, with 18 expired because of drain leases. 2020, there was 73. 10 of those were drain leases. But some of those are still open. In 2021, we have 35 year to date. 7 of those were expired drain leases, and some of those files are still open.
Mr. Brar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've been approached by a few producers sharing with me the problem of the ranchers who lease Crown lands. One of the ranchers has approached the minister through email, and he also shared that email with me, that a number of producers around his farm have been selling their cattle. They've been forced out by Crown land modernization. So I'm not sharing this as an individual case, but the impact of the example of the impact of Crown land changes on our ranchers' lives. So Did the minister get a chance to take a look on that email? And is the minister aware what's happening and what's the impact of this crownland modernization on our ranchers, especially in the north? And what steps the minister is taking to address this situation?
Minister Eichler.
Thank you. I'd like to share with my critic. So the fall auction of November of 2020, I think it's working out quite well. As the member knows, the auction process allows the individual to buy according to his or her own needs based on their evaluation of that particular piece of property. A lot of these are in the north. There's a few in the southern area. I think it's interesting to note that the auction value auction value that was allocated for all those properties was $22,800. Under the auction value allocated that we got was $72,414, of which there were 35 out of the 62 bidders. 35 of those were under the age of 40. So that speaks volumes to me as a minister. We're seeing young folks have an opportunity to be able to take advantage of these crown lands. Also want to share with the member for our February 21 sales. I don't have the dollar amounts, but I can tell you that there was 74 young bidders. That made up 60% of the total registered bidders. There was 124 bidders. Corporations, there was 30%, which was 15 corporations. And there was one out of province bidder. So I think the message is speaking loud and clear. Young farmers are having an opportunity to be able to take advantage of the new system. And the whole idea behind the modernization of the Crown Land Act was this, that we get in tune with the modern day age. I had many complaints about young farmers not having access to it. So I think we're meeting our goal. And as a result of that, the numbers I just put on the record, I think speaks volume to the opportunity for those young farmers going forward, which will be our next generation of farmers.
Mr. Brewer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Talking about the commercial fishers, they are upset with the minister and the way his department treats them. They strongly feel the department favors anglers over them due to personal connections between department employees and Manitoba Wildlife Federation. This situation is also supported by a published media story that the minister is aware of. Could the minister share with the committee the steps taken to address these concerns and get back to the commercial fishers to satisfy them the department is working unbiased?
Minister Eichler.
I can't talk about a particular case that the member is very much aware of, but I have endeavored. There's been an investigation that's ongoing, allegation made against my staff, so I will not discuss that here, just to protect those that are being investigated. But I can tell you that the member is wrong when it talks about our relationship with me as a minister. I just recently got back from Cedar Lake in Grand Rapids. I can tell you we were so happy to be able to have the certification process for Cedar Lake. Chief Easter was over the moon. Also, the chief from Grand Rapids also was over the moon with our organization. I can tell you that our relationship with our fishers has never been probably stronger. Yes, there's some hiccups in the system that we need to work out, but I will not accept the fact that they're not happy with me. They probably want some answers, what we want to get. Once we have that behind us, we're happy to sit down with those fishers and have those conversations. I have no problem sitting down with our fishers at all, but I have to be careful to protect my staff at the same time.
Mr. Brar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the minister being open to commercial fishers. About significant prevention.
Mr. Brar, sorry to interrupt you, but we lost your transmission there. If you wouldn't mind starting over.
Are you getting me now?
Yeah, sounds better.
Okay, thank you. Could the minister kindly share about significant provincial financial help offered to commercial fishers to help them sustain during the pandemic?
Minister Eichler.
What we did do for the fishers for the fishing season of 2019-2020, we waived the fees for our commercial fishermen. So that would take some of that responsibility off of them. But I can tell you in my role as economic development and jobs, we did lobby the federal government and our department here now that under my new portfolio, we did lobby the federal government. The federal government did provide $10 million to buy the fish back from the fishermen, which was a great move. I know there was lots of people that were involved in that. I know CEDF worked on this as well. Chief Arlen Dumas worked on this as well. We had lots of conversations about it. And I want to say a big thank you to the federal government for stepping forward and those that sided with us in regards to ensure that the fishermen got some compensation. And they got the fish too, by the way, to share with their families and others that that are on those First Nations, critically important to the sustainability of our fishers. Without those markets, and I'm concerned about those markets, I want to address this. I know we're probably going to get cut off, but I want to put this on the record that the Fresh Fish Marketing Board is really having trouble with their marketing. Unless we get more eco-certified lakes, we're not going to be able to market our fish on the world market. This is a critical issue for us, and we need all parties to be focused on what that should look like. Yes, we moved forward with Cedar Lake. Yes, Winnipegosis, Lake Manitoba, they're having discussions. The fishers on north of Lake Winnipeg are very much in favor of eco-certification. We have not got an agreement with the southern fishers on this, but it's an issue that we're going to have to come together on and find a balance to have that certification. I'll be very honest. I'll be surprised if Fresh Fish Marketing Board is be around in 5 years because we're not going to have sustainable markets for them to be able to fish for. Critically important that we understand the necessity of keeping our fishing sector alive in Manitoba. And net sizes have a lot to do with that. I know Chief Easter was so excited about working with us in partnership, and in fact, Chief Heidi Cook, also for up around Grand Rapids, talked about this as well. This is all so important for us to be able to have these conversations with our fishers and make sure we have an agreement. This is not about government. This is about protecting our fishers together as an organization and as government in partnership with our fishers.
Mr. Brer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Last two questions. Second last. Last year, Lazy Bear Expeditions was given 2 permits, allowing it to use Churchill Wildlife Management Area's off-road trail network. New permits for this area have not been issued since 1984. The permits were given with no local consultation or input. Additionally, an independent review previously concluded that the current number of vehicles be maintained as is due to environmental impact on bear habitat. What oversight was done prior to issuing these permits? Why was there no consultation prior to issuing these permits?
Minister Eichler.
Thank you, Minister Chair. Our department supports sustainable tourism in Churchill. As all members know, Churchill and with the COVID had really put them in a very bad position financially this year. A lot of them are in the risk of losing their business. After the third wave, we did have an opportunity to open up the U.S. border, and a lot of those operators were able to have access to a new marketplace. But within our polar bear conservation recovery plan, along with stakeholders, of course, the town of Churchill, the Indigenous communities, basically, we want to continue to have those dialogues as we go forward. So, what we want to do is make sure we find a balance and also provide economic growth for the town of Churchill. Critically important, and of course, making sure that we protect our polar bears as well. I think it's really critically important to make sure that we work together on this in partnership with not only the tour operators, but the community as well, to make sure it's successful.
Mr. Brar.
Could I quickly ask the last question, which is about the drought? With producers being forced to sell their cattle early, in some cases, the entire herds, how many fewer cattle producers are there anticipated to be in Manitoba now as a result of drought as compared to last year? And how many cattle were sold off this year, and how does that compare to previous years? Thank you. That was my last question.
Minister Eichler.
Yes, I can give them members some numbers that have been made public. We don't have a direct line with the auction marts to be able to give him exact numbers, but I'm sure he can get them from the auction marts. But the numbers that the department had that was sold in July was quite high compared to normal years. So my memory is telling me it was around 1,800 head that was sold as a result of the drought. Because they ran short of feed. But to have a direct number, I wouldn't be able to do that, but I can share with members that part of our recovery program, our ag recovery program, which I have not got sign off from the federal minister, but we want to have a herd rebuilding program so that those that did sell their cows off, and that's not only for them, it's for the bison. We also asked for the elk to be included in this as well. But it's really important that we get our numbers back. Manitoba is known for its great beef, and we want to ensure that they come back and just as strong as they were when they left. So I can't get in the details of that program because it hasn't been approved yet. But certainly, and quite frankly, I don't know if we'll have to use that money for this coming year either, to be totally honest. I mean, I wished I had a weather ball I could look in and say what's next year going to look like. But the rain has helped us a lot. A lot of cattlemen have been able to hold on to their herds this fall, mainly because of the rain we got since early August. I imagine a lot of them, I wish they would have planted some fall rye to extend that season probably into this month even yet, or in the middle of February. But I know we have had applications for a second crop cut on some of our crops that have been popped back up through voluntary growth, and we have said yes to that. So we're doing our best to maintain the herd numbers, but to give the member exact number on those were sold off because of the drought, I just don't have those numbers available. But I would suggest probably reaching out to the auction marts and seeing what he can find there, or we can assist him in that if something he feels we should be doing.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? Mr. Lamont.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I can ask Minister Eichler. We all know that this has been an extremely tough year for livestock producers. Many have had to sell off their herd. I was talking with producers who have seen enormous numbers. Until the rain came in August, there was real fear that we were going to see a wipeout of the herd. So thank goodness for rain, as always. But and they're selling it off usually when we don't sell off livestock. Can the minister say when he's going to be announcing funding for the program to help producers rebuild their herds after a lack of available feed?
Minister Eichler.
Well, I would ask the member to support us, and if he could get a call in to Minister Bebo. I'm really not sure when Trudeau's going to announce his new cabinet, or if Minister Bebo is going to be there. Personally, I have a great relationship with her, and I know that I can pick the phone up and call her, but I'm not even sure she's in the office yet. So once they're there, she's very much in favor of this program. She's told me so. I'm using that as my ace in the hole for Manitoba producers, because she liked the program. We're the only province that actually has talked about a herd rebuilding program, but it's one I think that would be really important for Manitoba, because we are known as a cow-calf province, and we're set up perfect for that. So my hope is that we announce it very, very soon.
Mr. Lamont.
Yeah, thank you so much. Because if you can just clarify, because as I understand, both Alberta and Saskatchewan announced, is there any reason why, is it just we're waiting for federal support? I mean, I'm more than happy to make a call or talk to people. But there have been announcements in Saskatchewan and Alberta. I think it was $200 a head support. So is there any reason why we can't proceed provincially here in Manitoba?
Minister Eichler.
Yes, Saskatchewan, Alberta did a per head payment. Now, all of those dollars would not be able to necessarily be the 60% shared with the federal government. She, to my knowledge, has not approved those. Our program is different than that. Again, I can't get in the details of our program in Manitoba, but they went, Alberta and Saskatchewan both went to every cow-calf, every cow in that province, and gave them $200 per cow, whether they had drought conditions or not. So that's on them. That worked out to almost $100 per taxpayer in the province of Alberta. Now, all of our producers were not impacted by the drought. So I want to be clear, our program is not for those that don't qualify for compensation. Ours qualifies for those that are in the drought conditions. There's parts of our province, in particular, the PAW. I mean, they're sitting very good with feed, with services. So our program's based on drought conditions and relied on that. And the herd rebuilding program will be exactly that. It's not for every producer in Manitoba, where Saskatchewan, Alberta is. That's the difference between the three provinces, so the member understands.
Mr. Lamont.
Thank you. Yeah, just some questions about agri-stability. There seems to be a pattern. We seem to be leaving money on the table, that there's about $5.4 million unspent in 2020-21. And clearly it was, a terrible year for lots of producers. And the line for agri-stability seems to show the province is budgeted around $3 million less this year. So just wondering why the provincial portion of agri-stability was not spent in 2021, and why is it budgeted lower for 21-22?
Minister Eichler.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll kind of go back a little bit. My critic had asked me a question on this earlier in regards to Agri-Invest. I do think it's important to put it on the record again. Right now, under Agri-Invest, we're sitting with $350 million that's available to our farmers. Again, they can apply for this at any point in time that they want. As I said before, a lot of producers, they just what they try and do is find the balance for their particular operation. So some will use that through crop insurance and take the risk on that, or they can go back through and go through Agri-Invest or through Agri-Stability. And it depends on whatever. So we go with the market, because 1 year could be a bit higher or it could be a bit less. And the same with crop insurance. It could be up 1 year and down the next, depending on the varieties and what they have for contracts. Now, a lot of grain buyers now are having margins built within their contracts. Now, this year was an exceptional year. We had lots of calls, farmers wanting to say, can I get out of my contract? The grain companies got on board on that in early July. They said, look, we know that you've already committed a contract with us for X number of acres of our tonnage of wheat. We know you're not going to make it. So rather than just us be short on ours, what other crops do you have that's available for you to be able to sell? So make a deal with them on them. So it all depends on the year. And of course, this year, some farmers, not all, will make off better because we're able to transfer some corn, for example, that wasn't going to make a crop, and they'd have been paid an insurance claim on that. So what we said, you can take that crop off for feed and we'll still pay you the amount that you had for crop insurance. Now, mind you, that's going to bring the averages down. So a lot of guys will make off better this year than they would in a normal year when they had a bumper crop. But again, the yields are about 50% of normal, but the prices are 50% higher than what they used to be. So it's a double-edged sword on agri-insurance, agri-stability. It all depends on each individual farm family's needs and wants to protect their farm family.
Mr. Lamont.
Yeah, thank you. So for primary agriculture, it says on the annual report, how many vacancies are there to be almost $1 million under on salaries and benefits? I know that there is a report in the Free Press, that our civil service has shrunk by 18% and we could be losing a lot more. And I'm also hearing we're seeing shortages and like all sorts of reasons, burnout, issues with retention in a number of areas. But can the minister just explain why do we have that sort of level of vacancy? And is there anything we're doing to reverse the course or restaff to make sure that the work that needs to get done?
Minister Eichler.
Yes, out of 54, we have 7 vacancies in primary ag.
Mr. Lamont.
Yeah, will there be an effort to be filling those spaces in, or because I know that there have been issues. We've been talking with people who've had issues, even getting through to whether it's getting through to mask or getting through to the department. Is there a plan to fill those vacancies?
Minister Eichler.
I can explain to the member that from our overall department, so our department went from roughly about 200 with the reorg and bringing in forestry and conservation officers and mining. Right now we have 65 positions that we're going to be filling. We hope to fill those sooner than later. But it would bring up an interesting point, again, coming back to your party. I would really appreciate any help you could give us in regards to trying to get Prime Minister Trudeau to get people off CERB. We're having a terrible time trying to get people back to work. The $2,000 a month, I'll use my granddaughter as an illustration. She's working 2 jobs. She's making $2,190 a month. She would get $2,000 a month to stay home. That's not how she was raised. She said, Granddad, I don't know why I'm doing what I'm doing sometimes, but you know, my friends are staying home and going to school, and she's going to school at night, by the way, on top of all this. But really, Manitobans need to get back to work, and we need to stop the programs and try and help businesses get staff. And we are having trouble hiring people. I'll be honest. It's not easy trying to find people. I will talk a bit about my previous role as Minister of Economic Development, Training and Jobs, but to find the skill set and the knowledge that we need in today's society, as it's all changed so much. Even restaurants are mostly digital now. When you go and order your meal, it's digital. A lot of people don't know how to do that. So we need the younger generation to help us get to that next level.
Okay, I noticed Mr. Wiebe had his hand up. Mr. Wiebe?
I'm done. Thank you.
To interject, I know that we had an agreement with our friends in the independent caucus there that we would maybe give them 10 minutes. I am just to disclose, I'm very eager to get to the next section and move on, but I'm hoping that we can all have agreement here today to just move on, get to the question, and then get on to the next section in this committee room.
Thank you for that. Are there any other questions? Okay, hearing no further questions, we will now proceed to consideration of the resolutions. At this point, we will allow all virtual members to unmute their mics so that they can respond to the question.
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Minister.
Yeah, my colleague from the Liberal, the leader of the Liberal Party had his hand up to ask a question. In fairness, I want to make sure everybody has fairness here.
Okay, Mr. Lamont, go ahead.
Thank you. I'll just be very brief. This is just on the subject of fishers, because I've done a fair bit of work with the commercial fishers. I was at their AGM just to say that there were some very serious concerns expressed about actually at Grand Rapids is a community that has lost over $1 million and issues around how carefully the quota buybacks need to be done. I hope that this is something that'll be done very carefully. It would be great if the minister would consider retroactively addressing the discriminatory buyback levels. But the other is just to say that for First Nations communities that fishing is absolutely essential, and if you're buying out quotas, it can have a devastating impact on those communities. So I know we all share the interest that this is a resource that needs to be done. So I hope that this is something that the minister will consider, especially, and I'm sure I'm sure they would be more than happy to meet with him as well if that's something. I'd be more than happy to facilitate that, as well as talking to my federal colleagues who we are actually a separate party. So, but I'd be more than happy to help.
Minister Eichler.
Yeah, I thank the member for his comments, and yes, we'll definitely. I met with Chief Heidi Cook, myself. And Chief Easter, we continue to have dialogues with a lot of the First Nation folks, and fishing sector is a large part of our economy. So we'll definitely endeavor to try and find a balance. I did say quite earlier on how important it is to our economic growth in a lot of those communities. And we want to make sure we find a balance. So we're happy to partner with you.
Okay, thank you. And I do have to ask one more time, are there any other questions? Hearing none, we'll move right into a resolution then. Resolution number 3.2. Be it resolved that there be granted to Her Majesty a sum not exceeding $13,087,000 for agriculture and resource development, policy and transformation for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2022. Shall the resolution pass?
Pass.
The resolution is accordingly passed. Resolution 3.3, be it resolved that there be granted to Her Majesty a sum not exceeding $132,852,000 for agriculture and resource development, risk management, credit, and income support programs for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2022. Shall the resolution pass?
Pass.
The resolution is accordingly passed. Resolution 3.4, be it resolved that there be granted to Her Majesty a sum not exceeding $18,007,000 for agriculture and resource development, stewardship, and assurance for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2022. Shall the resolution pass?
Pass.
The resolution is accordingly passed. Resolution 3.5, be it resolved that there be granted to Her Majesty a sum not exceeding $18,067,000 for agriculture and resource development, production, and economic development for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2022. Shall the resolution pass?
Pass.
The resolution is accordingly passed. Resolution 3.6, be it resolved that there be granted to Her Majesty a sum not exceeding $53,243,000 for agriculture and resource development, water stewardship, and biodiversity for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2022. Shall the resolution pass?
Pass.
Pass.
The resolution is accordingly passed. Resolution 3.7, be it resolved that there be granted to Her Majesty a sum not exceeding $14,163,000 for agriculture and resource development for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2022. Shall the resolution pass?
Pass.
The resolution is accordingly passed. Resolution 3.8, be it resolved that there be granted to Her Majesty a sum not exceeding $950,000 for agriculture and resource development capital assets for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2022. Shall the resolution pass?
Pass.
The resolution is accordingly passed. Resolution 3.9, be it resolved that there be granted to Her Majesty a sum not exceeding $243,100,000 for agriculture and resource development loans and guarantees programs for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2022. Shall the resolution pass?
Pass.
The resolution is accordingly passed. The last item to be considered for these estimates is item 3.1A, the minister's salary, as contained in resolution 3.1. The floor is now open for questions. Hearing no questions. Okay. Resolution 3.1. Be it resolved that there be granted to Her Majesty a sum not exceeding $7,034,000 for agriculture and resource development, administration, and finance for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2022. Shall the resolution pass?
Pass.
The resolution is accordingly passed. Okay. So this completes the estimates of the Department of Agriculture and Resource Development. Okay, good afternoon. Does the, let's see, this section of the Committee of Supply will now consider the estimates of the Department of Infrastructure. Does the Honourable Minister have an opening statement?
To ask if you could see if there was leave for myself to make a very short statement in the opposition.
Sorry,
could
Minister
respond
Schuler.
later.
Sorry, Minister Schuler. Sorry to interrupt you, but I do need to recognize you first. So, Minister Schuler, go ahead.
I was wondering if you could canvass the committee and see if there's leave for myself to make a very short statement on the passing away of Assistant Deputy Minister Ruth Eden, which happened this week. And then, of course, the opposition could respond, and then we would go into the regular statements. Is there leave?
Is there leave for the minister to provide a short statement on the passing of Ruth Eden?
Agreed.
Leave has been granted. Minister Schuler, go ahead.
Thank you. And it is with a very heavy heart that we must say goodbye to a beloved member of our team here at Manitoba Infrastructure. Assistant Deputy Minister of Technical Services and Operations, Ruth Eden, passed away this week. It has been a true shock to myself as Minister, Deputy Minister, senior staff, and the entire department. Ruth Eden was a mentor, a friend, advocate, trailblazer. She's one of the first women to achieve this high position. She's achieved positions throughout Manitoba. She was a trailblazer. She encouraged young women to get into engineering and was an unbelievable individual in this department. Personally, she was an incredible friend to myself. And we did a lot of tours together, high water tours, and she was always level, even keel, always had good advice. And I'm personally very shocked. I've said to the department, I actually don't feel it's even real right now. I'm very, very saddened that we lost an individual who is the ranking member of the department. And we turned to her a lot to get advice and what was done there and what did we do there and why did we do things. And she always had those answers. We can never replace Ruth Eden. And I don't think we should even try. We'll try to fill her position maybe at some point in time, but you can't replace Ruth Eden. We wish her family all the best. I know they're planning a funeral, and I hope at some point in time I can make a proper statement in the legislature. Thank you for allowing us to make this the statement. I do want to point out to all members of the legislature, there's a book of condolences outside of the Deputy Minister's office on the second floor. If you wish to come by and leave a little note, please do so. If you had an opportunity to work with Ruth, or you knew her, or she, you got to make her acquaintance, please leave a little note, and that will be handed over to the family. So, thank you, committee, for allowing me a few moments to reflect on the greatness of Ruth Eden.
Thank you for those very kind words, Minister. Did you wish to make an opening statement at this time? Minister Schuler.
I was wondering if the opposition wanted to make a statement and then I'd go into the opening statement.
Yeah, the indication, Minister, is to go ahead with your opening statement. No. Minister Schuler, go ahead.
Thank you very much. And COVID-19 pandemic in 2021 fiscal year was challenging for Manitoba Infrastructure, government at large, and all Manitobans. Manitoba Infrastructure recognizes its role as the Department of Hope, the Department of the Day After Tomorrow. Strategic infrastructure investments are fundamental to economic growth in Manitoba as we gain control of this pandemic through 2020, 2021, and push to restart the economy in 2021-22. Investment in our provincial highway, bridge, and water control networks will be more important than ever. Budget 2021 commits to a 3-year horizon of a minimum of $500 million per year for the highway capital budget, beginning with a 2021-2022 highway budget of $505 million, including $107 million for Manitoba Restart Program. Overall budget 2021-2022 include $786 million for Manitoba Infrastructure, Strategic Infrastructure, an increase of 21% from the $652 million announced in budget 2020-2021. In detail, the 2021-2022 budget includes $543 million for capital investment in our infrastructure, $107 million for Manitoba Restart projects, as well as $136 million for renewal activities, including $124 million for maintenance and preservation of highways and bridges, and $12 million for maintenance and preservation of water-related assets. Key department highlights include the following recent upcoming activities. We view ourselves as the international trade hub that will connect east with west and north with south, not just within Manitoba, not just within Canada, but within North America. Manitoba Infrastructure is proceeding with the first steps towards phase 2 of the perimeter safety review, which will include the north section of the perimeter highway, PTH 101, from Portage Avenue to Fermor Avenue. The perimeter highway is Manitoba's most important international trade hub. It is a key link in the Trans-Canada Highway and plays a strategic role in Manitoba's economy by providing industry with access to world markets. Phase 2 of the perimeter safety review builds upon phase 1, which was developed for the South Perimeter Highway in 2018. We anticipate completing the safety improvement projects identified in both phases over the next several years. As a result of Manitoba Infrastructure's recent reorganization, the department's budgetary structure will look significantly different in 2021-2022. These changes will contribute to better service delivery in 2021-22 and beyond. On May 7th, 2020, the $500 million Manitoba Restart Program was announced. A significant portion of this funding has been dedicated for highway infrastructure improvement projects, including $150 million for asphalt highway and resurfacing and $65 million for major projects to improve road safety. $107 million of this spend is scheduled to occur in 2021-2022. Manitoba Infrastructure has made significant progress in working through the environment assessment and federal approvals process and continues to engage impacted communities as part of this process. We're also strongly committed to fulfilling our responsibility for consultation under Section 35 of the Constitution Act. We will proceed with construction as soon as we receive environmental approvals. The channels will take approximately 4 years to construct at a total cost of more than $540 million. Manitoba Infrastructure is committed to providing high levels of service while also creating opportunities for better value for money. The department is working to strengthen partnerships and collaboration with municipalities, industry, and other private sector entities to enhance service levels and find efficiencies. The department is integrating partnerships into the review of its operating model to determine the best way to reduce soft costs. Manitoba Infrastructure is developing a 5-year strategic highway investment plan. This initiative will include an investment framework to plan and prioritize future transportation projects across the province. Recently implemented across the government of Manitoba, balanced scorecards foster operational improvements by reinforcing transparency, alignment, and accountability. They've been added to the redesigned supplement to identify key priorities for each department that staff will work towards with appropriate performance measures. With a supplement redesigned to be a business plan that focuses on strategic priorities, departments can take steps to create operating plans that further identify how strategic priorities will translate into day-to-day operations. The performance results of these operations will be shared at the end of the fiscal year in the department's annual report. In closing, I would like to thank Deputy Minister Sarah Teely and the leadership that she has shown in this department, along with the other ADMs who have been just amazing. We mentioned Ruth Eden, who was just something else to work with. I know we as department will miss her. I will introduce all the rest of them when we start getting into the estimates. So thank you. Those are my opening remarks.
And we thank the minister for those statements. Does the critic from the official opposition have an opening statement? No, he does not. So the floor, therefore, is open for questions. Oh. I guess I got to do my job right first, so sorry about that. So under Manitoba practice, debate on the minister's salary is the last item considered for a department in the Committee of Supply. Accordingly, we shall now defer consideration of line item 15.1A contained in resolution 15.1. Does the committee wish to proceed through the estimates of this department chronologically or have a global discussion? Mr. Wiebe?
I would suggest a global matter.
A global matter? Is any discussion? Everyone agree? Agreed, then we shall perform in a global discussion. Therefore, the floor is now open for questions. Mr. Wiebe.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I thank the minister for his opening statement. Could the minister undertake to provide with a current organizational chart of the department, including the names of individuals and vacancies for positions that remain open?
Thank you very much.
Minister Schuler.
Thank you very much for that question. Joining me here today is, and you can follow along on page 11 of the main estimate supplement, budget 2021. If you want to follow along, there's a organizational chart. Deputy Minister Sarah Teely is here virtually for the committee. Corporate Services Division, Assistant Deputy Minister Christine Sire. Infrastructure Capital Projects, Assistant Deputy Minister Rob Taylor. Emergency Management, ADM Johanna Bota, who is not with us currently. He is otherwise engaged. And unfortunately, there is a chair that will be empty for some time, and that will be Technical Services and Operations, ADM, the late Ruth Eden. With me is also Andrew Clark, who is my special assistant, who doesn't show up on this org chart. I hope that answers the members' questions.
Mr. Wiebe.
Well, I think what the minister knows what I'm getting at here, and if you'd refer to pages 65 and 66 of his annual report, he'd note that there is now currently $48 million that's being underspent in his department because of staff vacancies in various areas. So what we're looking for from the minister is to provide an update to the committee of the current number of FTEs in the department, and most importantly, the current vacancy rate, so that we can get an updated number to work with as we go forward here over the next couple of days.
Minister Schuler.
Thank you very much. In budget 2021-22, we have 1,820 positions. That is down 5 from 2020-2021. I'd like to point out to committee that currently, as of April 1st, we were at 631 vacancies. And that's also because we had many new positions coming on with the reorganization. And this would also include the seasonal hiring. So we hire a lot of students for the summer who do all kinds of great work. I would suggest that's how we end up recruiting a lot of really good people into the department. We identify individuals who show a lot of talent and a lot of love for what they're doing. And we end up hiring a lot of very smart young engineers into the program. So this would also be impacted by the fact that we hadn't started our summer hiring, which is reflected in that number.
Mr. Weed.
Well, yeah, I'll have to break out the calculator here, but that seems like an incredibly high number. Maybe the minister can just clarify by telling the committee which area each of these vacancies is in. And I can understand that this might be something that isn't, readily available to him right now. So if he wanted to, take this under consideration, I understand, or I guess 2 days until we come back into estimates, but we can certainly pick up where we left off there. So just which area are each of these vacancies in?
Minister Schuler.
With the reorganization of the Department of Manitoba Infrastructure, we created an Infrastructure Capital Projects Division. That's many new areas. In fact, if you were to go to page 111 of the estimates of expenditure for the fiscal year March 31st, 2022, page 111 and page 112, infrastructure capital projects. And then under there, we have, for instance, under D, project services, this is a new division. We'll have a center of excellence amongst other areas which we are now hiring for. Again, I would point out that there's a lot of hiring that also takes place seasonally, which would also be reflected in why the number as of April 1st was higher. It's because there is a substantive fluctuation that happens seasonally. This is something that happens regularly under previous governments, happens under ours. We ramp up for spur. too cool, we can't lay any more asphalt. And that kind of ends the end of the season. And even with pouring concrete, there's a certain limit to which they can pour concrete to.
Sorry to interrupt there, Minister, but you froze there for about 25 seconds. So we missed some of what you had said. If you want to just do a really quick recap, that would be beneficial. Minister Schuler?
So, thank you. Under previous governments, same thing again, we do hire seasonally. As soon as the frost is out of the ground, which was earlier this year, which was very, very advantageous for construction. It was a drier year. I know that wasn't very advantageous for farmers or for forest fires, but for construction, it was a really big boon. As you know, we live with the bottom, what used to be the bottom of Lake Agassiz, and the Gumbo, if it gets wet, is very tough to do construction work in. So we've had a very good season, and with the extended season with the nice weather that we're having, asphalt still being laid and concrete without hoarding can still be poured. So we hire for those and we try to keep them on for as long as we can. We understand students are now going back to school, so that number does fluctuate. And I don't know if you caught that we also have the Center of Excellence, which is on page 112. That is new, and we're going to be hiring for that as well. So by next year, the entire number will come down to a degree, but again, it does reflect seasonal hiring.
Mr. Weeb.
So I didn't hear the minister commit to getting me that list, and I do think it would be helpful for the work of the committee. I think it would be helpful for us to understand exactly where those folks are. So I'm just going to ask him very clearly if he can have that list ready to go for us for next opportunity to sit. The other thing, and I can appreciate we're running very short on time here, that I would ask the minister maybe so that we can be ready to roll next day, is for a detailed list of budgeted projects, amounts spent, and deferred projects for the past fiscal year as outlined on page 24 of the public accounts, where it breaks down the actuals versus the budgeted amounts for strategic infrastructure for 2021.
Minister Schuler.
Well, we're getting the answer for that question in the main estimate supplement of Manitoba Infrastructure. I would encourage you to go to page 18, where the FTEs are listed out by division. So you can have a look at that, where the breakout is. And that probably answers the question for the member there, and mindful of the time that we're under. We've had a very busy season, and we are constructing right until the last moment where we can still lay asphalt or pour concrete. We hope to see a lot of projects continue after that if they just involve moving earth, or piling can be done in colder weather. So we will continue with those, and mindful that we are just about at the end of our time if the member has one quick question after this.
Mr. Weeb.
Well, no, I mean, I'm well aware of the information on page 18 in this, paltry book that's been distributed to us. That's been, this is the, compared to previous years and the detail that's available. So I'm hearing from the minister that there are 631 vacancies, and he's trying to hand wave these away by saying, well, it's seasonal workers. So, well, maybe it's about the reorg, or maybe it's about this, the fact that it's we can't lay asphalt right now. Well, I think we need to be very clear here for Manitobans, based on what the minister is bringing forward. This idea that his department is the Department of Hope, I think is what he called it. And yet, we don't know why there are so many vacancies, and we hear about major issues and concerns when it comes to safety on the highways and roads in our province. So I think he needs to be very clear and detailed about where these vacancies lie, and exactly which area they are in, and if they can be explained away as simply just seasonal workers that no longer are employed by the department, then he should be able to come to this committee and bring that information forward and be proud of that, to say, yeah, absolutely, we're on track. But that's not what we're hearing from people out in the field, and we're not what we're hearing about the safety and the importance of transportation in our province, especially heading into the winter season. So I just ask that the minister, come in good faith. I'm trying to do the same here, and I'm trying to just get to the bottom of this. Hopefully we'll have more time next session.
Order. Time being 6 o'clock. Committee rise.